Folks, what I'm going to do today, quite a few of you have had some experience of my StratSnap process, and what I'm going to share with you now is the sort of absolutely basic bare bones logic of that system in a way of working that you can use anywhere, anytime, and pretty much any situation. So I think you all know who I am, so I'm not going to go through that. And as I say, it can be applied in any situation. So in organizing the findings of a report, so if I do something called a pulse measurement, so I go on site with a client or on Zoom for a day or a couple of days, do a series of interviews, draw some conclusions, and literally what I do, certainly before the pandemic, I would go out on site for a day or 2 days, interview the top team. And at the end of the day, I would sit down for an hour and do the process that I'm just going to share with you now, and go through that and type up a report. And literally in an hour, I would have a structured report prioritizing the findings of my investigation. You can use it if you're buying a car, buying a house, anything where you need to organize your ideas. It's very simple, very easy to use. And you're going to say, well, is that sort of a good way to spend 15 minutes on Maxis? And I believe it is. I think it's a useful tool. So just in terms of a situation where I actually used the tool, but the audio is off on this. So client who is very happy. So we're going to go through a focus question. We're going to do some brainstorming. We're going to talk about synthesizing critical factors, weighting, scoring, taking a decision, or writing a report, and action. So let's talk about the focus question. So the focus question would be, for example, critical concerns. What is the outcome of this? What are the critical findings of this investigation? What's the essence of the message of my article or my presentation or whatever? So you just sit down and ask that question, formulate that question quickly. You then go on and do some brainstorming. Now, if you're just doing this on your own, on a pad of paper somewhere, and what I want to stress, folks, is I'm doing this at a very basic level as something that you can use anywhere, anytime. So brainstorming, if it's just you on your own and you're immersed in the situation, you may not do any brainstorming. Otherwise, you would go through the standard brainstorming process. Just write down everything that comes to mind. If the subject is limited, you can clear, and you're clear on the issues, you may decide that it's not limited. Then you formulate your critical factors. What do I mean by critical factors? Those of you who have heard me speak before would have seen these slides to some extent, but it's a slightly different angle. So to get from anywhere to anywhere by car, you need a car, a driver, fuel, car in working order, GPS, or directions. If you don't have any of those 5 items, you won't get from anywhere to anywhere by car. Be nice if the driver's experienced, we had a good autopilot. Be nice if it was a comfortable car with air conditioning, premium brand, etc. The last 2 are optional, the first 5 are critical. So what we're focusing on is, what is the absolute essence of your message? What are the critical factors in deciding which car to buy, or how to structure your report, or whatever the case may be? Why 7? It's close to 80-20. I found that 7 works better than 5 or 6. Presentation theory, 5 to 10 slices on a pie chart. Something called the Hare limit, 7 plus or minus 2 abstract concepts simultaneously. If you Google it, you'll find it. And the average human can manage 7 plus or minus 2 direct reports. So 7 is a bit of a magic number. And I found repeatedly over many years, it's very useful in terms of getting your thinking structured. So to do what we're talking about here, and this is what we do in the StratSnap process, which a number of you have been through. But now we're doing this at a very simple, easy to use, anywhere you are, sitting in a client's offices or wherever. Take an A4 pad, write 1 to 7 in the left-hand margin, space it out, say 3 lines apart. Write your focus question or subject at the top of the page. Write a short sentence for each factor against each point. So you're sitting there with your pad and you're thinking, and you're coming out with 7 factors. I do this all the time. I do a lot of writing. I've got a religious ministry. I publish at least 1 article a week, and I use this approach to structuring my articles. Write a short sentence for each factor against each point. Generally, there will be some sort of logical flow, so juggle the sequence. If really necessary, go to 8 or 9 factors, but generally 7 will give you a better result. Once you have all the factors summarized, then put a heading in capital letters, and if there are several people involved, you could do this separately and merge results on a separate sheet of paper, although then I would suggest that you do it on a spreadsheet. So there you are, there's laying out the page, starting to fill it in. You see the arrow there showing that after I'd written down the second point, I thought, well, actually, that's the first point that I want to make. This is critical. This was producing an outline for an article on the critical components of a strategic plan. There you see I've got all my 7 points written down. I've left a bit of space between each line so I can put in a heading. I go through it and I put in a heading, which is just 2 or 3 words, which summarizes the essence of the sentence that I've put there. And then we go through and we weight, and what does that look like? The total weights for all 7 factors must equal 100%. Spread the weights to reflect relative importance, and all 7 factors are important. Some are more important than others. Again, if there's more than one person involved, you could do it out privately, but I would suggest then that you do that either with a spreadsheet or you get hold of StratSnap from me. If it's a high weight, it's 20 to 30% or more. Low weight is under 10%. Try and spread the weights out as much as possible so that you've got 1 or 2 items with a really low weight and 1 or 2 items with a really high weight. Write the weights in the left-hand margin. They must add up to 100%. So typically you'll find it'll take you 2 or 3 shots to get that right. Again, several people, I wouldn't really do it on a sheet of paper. Actually, I would do it in a spreadsheet. So there you see I've got the weights, and you can see it took me 3 shots here to get that right. This looks very scrappy, folks, but it's about what's happening in your head as you do this. It's about crystallizing your thinking and getting clear what it is you want to say in your report, or what it is you want to say in your article, or what it is that you know that's important in terms of a buying decision or whatever the case may be. Final product here typed up. And literally what I find is interesting about this, if I just sit down at the computer and start typing, I'll end up with 2 or 3 pages. If I do this process on a sheet of paper, and there's something that certainly for me happens differently if I do this first on a pad of paper by hand and then type it up. It's more crisp, it's more to the point. And from a point of view, many years ago, I struggled to produce a 1-page executive summary. There's a fairly solid body of opinion which says that if you can't communicate your message to an executive in 1 A4 page, you've lost the plot. And this is a way of condensing your message into 1 A4 page. So when I do these executive level investigations, I use this method. Literally, I do my last interview, and an hour later, I'm sitting with the chief executive and presenting them with a typed up report. It's very, very flexible. It's very, very powerful. And you rank the things in terms of the weights. The weights are an important part of saying, yes, there are 7 points to my message, but actually the first 3 points are the ones that you really want to focus on. Here's another example, slightly different final result of another situation. You can then go on and score. And I like to score on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is couldn't be worse anywhere in the world, and 10 is couldn't be better in the world. If you're doing this with a group of people, that's really important because people have different experience sets, so their 0 and 10 may be different. Typically, you would score in the middle third, but if it's on the outliers, you need to be clear that there's sort of some strong reasons. So write the scores in the left-hand margin. Again, if there's more than one participant, frankly, I would do that in a spreadsheet. Note differences of opinion, have a discussion. Items with weights less than 7 and less than 5 and less than 3, and draw relevant conclusions. A score of 5 or less needs urgent attention or indicates a highly unattractive option. If you're evaluating more than one option, for example, several houses, take a clean sheet of paper, spreadsheet, and write the scores in columns. Apply the weights to the scores, multiply the weights, and divide by the number of factors. The item with the highest weighted score is the preferred option. So that's very useful. I've used this on a number of occasions when looking at properties. You end up with 3 or 4 houses that you've looked at, and they're all really attractive. You do this exercise. What are my critical success factors for the new house? You weight them, and then you go through and say, for house number 1, it's 7 and 5 and 9 and 3, and so on. You multiply out the weights, and very quickly you've got a clear picture of what's really important to you. And what you'll find is that this can be really helpful in terms of your thinking. So there's the finished workshop. It's very scrappy. As I said, you would normally write it up, type it up afterwards if it's for a client. So take a decision, write your report, and there you have it. Another example. And then you draw whatever conclusions are relevant and take whatever action is appropriate. Issue the report, flesh out the book, rent or buy the appropriate house, etc. If you follow this process rigorously, you're likely to have a high level of confidence in your result. If you have questions, welcome to email me. And as I say, we have a spreadsheet which does the job for you. So there we are. Any questions?